We want. Welcome to Orlando, Florida. We are broadcasting live streaming, podcasting from the center of the autonomous universe right now, which is Xponential, which is the booth of autonomous media, which is InsideGNSS, Inside Unmanned Systems, and Inside Autonomous Vehicles. And today with me, I have an old friend, Frank Boynton, who is the Vice President and Chief Technology Officer of Navtech GPS. Frank, welcome to our live stream.
Thank you, Richard. I'm glad to be on your live stream, and always good to be in the Orlando area.
My gosh.
Always warm. Nice,
yeah.
sunny.
And not only is Frank an old friend, he's a neighbor. His booth is right next to ours, and our booth is in the 2300 aisle. So stop by and say hello.
Yeah, we got lucky to be next to you this time.
Oh,
We're happy about that.
Yeah, same here. So the reason I wanted to chat with you is I wanted to preview a little bit about your talk that is coming up tomorrow. It is a topic on which you have a great deal of experience and expertise, and it's something that's near and dear to our hearts from the PNT and kind of inside GNSS community. It's GNSS jamming, detection, and mitigation.
Yes, all important.
So tell us about this.
Sure. So tomorrow my talk is GNSS jamming, detect and mitigate today. So there is a problem in the world, as most people know, and if you don't know it, it will happen to you. Not really a matter of if, but when. It is a prevalent problem.
Do you know when
right
it's
now.
going to happen? Can you tell people when it's going to happen?
When jamming is going to happen?
Yeah.
No, we really can't for the most part, because it can pop up anywhere. But you look at something like the Ukraine theater, we do know the Russians are pretty good at jamming, and they do like to do it, and they may end up doing it sometime. They have not, so far, jammed the GPS signals too terribly much that we know of, but that would be a good instance for it.
And so there's lots of occurrences of jamming. It's both intentional and unintentional, right?
Absolutely. So we actually see a lot more unintentional than intentional in our world. So we have a detector that will detect, find GNSS jamming sources, and a lot of time it's just something that went wrong, something that was an accident. They didn't actually mean to do it, but it does happen. It could be an RF leak from somewhere, an antenna amplifier that's oscillating and has gone bad, or we've even seen it where people have put radio systems on an aircraft for some reason that were too close to a GPS antenna, for instance. So
it can be
all kinds of sources.
Yeah, and it can be self-jamming even.
Absolutely.
Right? That RF leak can happen lots of places, right?
Absolutely. No one wants it, but it happens.
So it's both detection. That's one. It's important to A, know that you're being jammed.
Yes.
B, know kind of directionally where it came from.
Absolutely.
Right? So there's a geolocation consideration.
Yes.
And then mitigation.
Mitigation.
So what can attendees to your talk tomorrow kind of expect to learn about mitigation?
Sure. So that's a great point also about knowing that you're jammed to begin with. Why is my GNSS receiver not functioning properly? It could be a whole lot of things, but jamming's a little bit tougher to detect. It's not a broken antenna or something along those lines, but mitigation is really what it's all about, right? We want to be able to keep moving and keep using GNSS in the environment that we're in. We don't want to just stop using it. So what we're going to talk about is a little bit of mitigation before it gets to the GPS receiver, and then the GPS receivers themselves, the GNSS receivers, now have mitigation properties built into them that they can detect. We can null and look at other things, and then there's other signals as well. So it's not just GPS. We've mentioned GNSS, which also encompasses other constellations, Galileo, GLONASS and IRNSS and others, so we can use those as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that and how to do it, and how to make it happen.
Sure. Jamming will happen anywhere at any time.
Absolutely.
We've published more than a couple of articles on both the frequency and the severity of jamming.
Yes, absolutely.
They're shockingly ubiquitous, and we think that if people really understood the degree to which there was this threat out there, jamming, that is to say, they would take mitigation a little more seriously. I think it speaks well. I mean, it's almost as if the GNSS manufacturers are kind of a victim of their own success, right? People are so used to it working perfectly all the time, ubiquitously. They take it for granted, you know? So
absolutely.
And so I know, so for example, one of your customers or one of the boards you sell actually has an ITK, which is an interference toolkit, built in that you can. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can tell you a little bit about it. So there are a few different levels of what you can do with it. You can tune it. You can also go in and you can set it to auto, so it will detect any jamming sources or interference, and it will deal with it the best it can. So you can't always knock out every interference source, but a lot of times you can. There's a lot of things that we can do to help mitigate that.
Yeah, and those boards are manufactured by.
So we have two different boards that have it directly on the board. One would be Novatel, and the other one is Xponential, and they have that capability directly on those boards. And we'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow. Oh, that's great. That's great. So, what time does your talk begin tomorrow, Frank? Because this is really important stuff. Thank you. It's 11:30 a.m. at the Solutions Theater here at the AUVSI Xponential show, right over in the corner. You know, Frank, as we kind of think about and survey the landscape here on, in the autonomous universe, what do you think the biggest challenge is for the kind of core PNT community? What do this ecosystem of companies and user communities out there, what don't they understand about PNT? Sure. So I think that the community at large now has a good idea about what PNT is, what it does, and how it works: position, navigation, and timing. It all comes down from the satellite, but we've got to be able to receive those proper satellite signals. And as far as the interference, it can be tricky. If someone is trying to do it on purpose, they can get it in there sometimes. But that doesn't mean that it's going to happen all the time. But I think that, there needs to be some community awareness, and there needs to be the drive behind, making sure that we don't have these problems, and also that there are components that are built for this. Let's have antennas that have mitigation properties built in. Right. Let's have GPS receivers that have mitigation properties built in, and I think there needs to be more of that and a push to make that happen. Right. No. Yeah. Well, not everybody's doing it. And in an effort to push that, to make it happen, you're going to be speaking tomorrow at 11:30. It's at booth 2869. Yes. And be there tomorrow at 11:30 to learn from one of the leading experts who's got 20 years experience of actually being in the field and deploying these systems and techniques to mitigate the kind of jamming and threats of intentional and unintentional interference that we've talked about. So I appreciate your time today, Frank. Thank you, Richard. It's always a pleasure, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Perfect. See you then. Okay, so from Autonomous Media, publisher of InsideGNSS and Inside Unmanned Systems, you have just heard Get Into the Future podcast featuring our friend Frank Boyton, Vice President, Chief Technology Officer of NavTech GPS. Check out his talk tomorrow, booth 2869, 11:30. Important stuff. Thanks, everyone.